Hey, good day, everybody. Hope you got your coffee. Settle in. I'm going to do a little bit of what I call processing in real time. I figure some of the best ways to show things and teach things is to kind of turn the camera on while you're experiencing them yourself, right? And see what happens, see where it goes. So today, I always like to have the date on things for some reason. So the 25th of June, 2026. Now, what is interesting about this is 10 years ago, my life was very, very different. 10 years ago, my life was a pure form of hell, which I had a very integral part of creating, right? And in the end, it was for my highest and best. Didn't feel like it at the time. Absolutely not. But the one thing that happened is subsequently, I ended up leaving my marriage some number of months later. I think it was back in like February 2017. And as I got out on my own and got into an environment that wasn't so chaotic, um, and I'd had enough patterning in my life show up in my relationships to finally say, yes, the people that have been in relationships with have done some very crappy things consistently. And yet at the same time, there was this piece of me that had finally recognized, like, dude, you are a common denominator in this. There is something within you here. I didn't know what that was at the time, that is allowing this to happen. I didn't understand anything about co-creation, about you create your world type of thinking at that time. But I knew enough to know that this pattern keeps showing up. The person I'm in relationship with may be different, may have changed, but the pattern keeps showing up and the pattern actually keeps getting worse and worse. There is something in here that's allowing this. Now, the fact is, I didn't realize this to the great extent back then. I was so enmeshed in my relationships because I had no sense of self. Having no sense of self is a very, very detrimental way to approach the world and to approach things, right? But I had been taught that self was bad, that thinking of yourself was bad, that you were always supposed to put others first, and that putting others first meant and equated to sacrifice of self. So when I came out of that relationship, I'd had enough experiences to say, dude, you got to look, you got to start figuring out what's in here. So I did a lot of work, a lot of searching. And one of the things that came up was starting to be able to separate out who am I and what's mine versus what is theirs. I was so used to operating over there all the time. What do they need? And then accommodating, moving myself to accommodate whatever is needed in the environment at the time, right? It's something I still struggle with, something that I still have to be very conscious of. And one of the things that I came up with that came out of nowhere, I don't remember if I read it from a book or what, but this question, this may have come from therapy actually. I think it came from therapy. What does Michael want? Because I remember that question. I remember my trauma therapist bringing up this question, what does Michael want? Just the question alone made my nervous system go frenetic, right? My nervous system felt crazy. Like, you can't ask that question. Because if I ask the question of what does Michael want, well, that means I'm thinking of myself, and thinking of myself means I'm putting myself before others. And if I put myself before others, that's bad. That's sinful, because that means I've taken my eyes off Jesus and now Satan has a hold of me, right? It sounds ridiculous when you spell it out like that. But nevertheless, that is the framework, that is the architecture, that is the structure that was living in my subconscious, the belief system, part of the belief system that was there, right? So no matter how ridiculous it sounds, that was the truth. That was what the belief system was putting forth at that time. What does Michael want? And I remember sitting there thinking, oh my God, in the trauma therapy session there, I was freaking out. I was like pushing the couch back. My whole body was like, get away from this question, right? Made me extremely uncomfortable. And I thought maybe we were just going to be able to deal with it in that session. We would move on because I didn't want to deal with this. But my trauma therapist, her name was Sarah, wonderful, wonderful woman. She says to me, I want you to go home and I want you to write this down. I want you to take this question, what does Michael want? And I want you to work with it. I want you to see what comes up and just allow yourself to be with the question. So I did that. I didn't have a whiteboard at the time, but I took a roll of wrapping paper, turned it over, taped it to the wall, wrote on the back of it, what does Michael want? And the most annoying thing about the whole thing was just the question itself made me want to come out of my skin. But each day when I went in there and looked at that, and then frustration came and anger came because nothing was coming. Day after day, nothing was coming. And then finally one day, something came. I started writing it down. I started making the list. I still have the list somewhere, right? And then as I started building out this list, little by little by little, day by day by day, this was not a one and done process, right? This was a process in and of itself, but it's not like I'm going to sit down for 15 minutes or an hour or 3 hours and figure it all out. No, you had to we are in the 3D. Time is real in the 3D, right? And so we must work. We must allow for time to do its own part of the process. When I had a pretty good list, all of a sudden I came in one day and I recognized for the first time, I'm like, wait a minute, this thing right here, that's not me. And then I actually wrote the name of the person where that came from. I recognized that's not me. That's a different person. It's person A, right? And this one, that's not me. That's person B. That's what person B wanted. That's what person A wanted. This one, oh, this one, I think that's me. Going through this process helped me begin to define where does Michael start and stop, right? And where does another person start and stop or begin and end? It was helping me undo that enmeshment that would become, that had defined every intimate relationship that I had ever been in, right? It was helping me pull that enmeshment apart so I could start identifying what is me versus what is someone else. What is mine versus what is theirs? The reason I bring this up is because this seems to be the question that's arising for me again. Now, there will be some people that will argue, like, don't focus on something that you want, because when you focus on something that you want, there's already a lack there. And so you're operating from a space of lack. And although there is some truth to that, sometimes we need to bring it back to the most basic thing. Addressing a question of what does Michael want felt so uncomfortable to me that, yes, that absolutely was the place to start. And again, it had a lot to do with separating out what is mine versus what is not mine, what is theirs, what is another's. And this could be likes and dislikes and goals and dreams and visions and things that we desire in life, experiences that we want to have in life. It could be likes and dislikes, because when you get enmeshed with others, when you have no solid sense of self, then it's very difficult to know. Now, you may know your favorite color. I never lost my favorite color. I never become so enmeshed that I didn't know what my favorite color was. But let's face it, your favorite color is a very basic thing, right? And by the way, my favorite color has always been blue. My first car that I bought was a Pontiac Firebird Royal Blue. That car was awesome. So after going through this, I could really start to clearly define, oh my gosh, look how enmeshed I've been with people. Look how I could start putting in some boundaries in place, start saying like, wait a minute, this is mine, right? This is not mine. It also goes to, what am I carrying that's not mine, right? What have I defined that is mine, an attribute of myself, or that is my responsibility to carry, that's actually not mine and it belongs to somebody else? And then you have the ability, once you begin sorting that out, separating that out, to say, I'm going to let that go because that's not mine. I'm going to give that back, return to sender, let it be theirs to do what they want with. Not mine, not my responsibility. I'm not going to carry it. I'm not going to take this dream and bring it into fruition because it's not mine. Whatever the case may be. This question has been coming up a lot lately because, as you know from previous videos that I've done, been in a sabbatical time, right, where I have let go of many, many things. Now, over the past 10 years also, I've done a lot of work on myself, a lot of inner work, because all transformation comes by inner work. I think it's Romans 12:2, but I could be wrong in that, right? Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, right? So I'm going to write that down. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Again, I believe that's Romans 12:2, but I could be off on that. I know it's in Romans. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Renewing. This process was a question of renewing my mind. And notice where transformation starts. Transformation does not start out there with Jesus, which is another reason why this was so difficult for me, right? Because Jesus falls into the there category. Jesus falls into an external entity, an external person, an external thing, right? That I was focused on. It's like, I'm supposed to live that way. I'm supposed to be like that. I'm supposed to do these things, right? The transformation, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The transformation begins with you and the renewing of your mind. And yes, God does do the work as well, because where is God? We know from Luke 17:21. Luke 17:21 is the kingdom of God is within you. Right? Now, some people will argue about this within. I've got another video on that, but the Greek word is entos. Entos means inside of, within, right? So anybody who says, no, that's just amongst us and Jesus was amongst us, they're incorrect. Plain and simple as that. Entos, within. The kingdom of God is within you. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, right? God lives within you. So God is involved in the process of transformation, but you have to do the work. It is your mind. It is your subconscious that has these beliefs in it, that has these different ways of being in it, that came from a lot of experiences in our early childhood time, right? And we take these early experiences, we create beliefs and all of this stuff that end up building resilience in us, And we carry all of these things mostly unknowingly into our adult years. And then we have a belief system that we're trying to live our adult relationships out of, but that belief system was built on a very formative time of our life. It doesn't mean that belief system's bad. It just means, hey, likely that belief system needs upgraded. It's just like a computer, right? Especially back in the day when computers were first coming out, you had these big upgrades and these big updates that they did. Hey, we've got a bunch of better things now. Let's update the operating system. Let's update and improve what we've previously built upon. In fact, some of the things that we built before, that we put in there before, we're just going to get rid of because they don't really work that well. It's the same type of thing that we're doing. The transformation comes from within. God is within. The I am lives within. This is why you are the temple. And Jesus speaks of this in Matthew, right? Where he says, I tell you the truth, you can tear this temple down, and in 3 days I will rebuild it. And then in parentheses, the scripture actually even says Jesus was referring to his body. And it's not just his body, because he came here to show the way, right? This is all of us. And if you think that's a little bit off, then look into the word Golgotha, right? The place of the skull. That's where Jesus was crucified. Isn't that interesting that we have a skull? Golgotha is right here. If you start looking into the esoteric and the metaphysics of what is being described there through these stories, you'll find some amazing, amazing things. And it's littered throughout the entire Bible, the truth of the fact that God lives within you, that you are God incarnate. You are the Word become flesh, and your transformation is your responsibility. It's not about, oh God, please take this away from me. Jesus, help me with this, because you're outsourcing your power to something without something external to you. Instead, you say that same prayer, but you're like, God, I know I have the strength. Thank you for the strength within. Thank you for the strength. Thank you that I am all powerful. Thank you that I have all the strength and all the grace that I need. Right? It's an acknowledgement of the truth and the remembrance of the truth of who you are. You are divine, clothed in human form. And some people will say, well, that's terrible to make yourself out to be God. And yet even Jesus says, as he's quoting a verse from the Jewish scriptures, which I believe comes from Psalms, but it says, your own scriptures say, don't you know that ye are gods? Right? Now I'm getting a little off track here because, like I said, I just want to allow things to flow, and this is where things happen to be flowing right now. But it is your responsibility to be transformed. You want a different life? That's your responsibility. You have to make changes, right? What is that thing that says, oh, what do you know, your thoughts become, what is it, actions or behaviors, and those things become habits, and then those things are just ways of being, right? It's the same thing. You say, and I look at Michael, and I looked at this old thing 10 years ago, and it's like 9 years ago, and I want to say, okay, this person that was so enmeshed with other people at the time, that didn't know his likes, didn't know his dislikes, didn't know whatever, I have come a long way, and I've actually been able to rebuild and create a life that I love, and a life that is full of peace, and a life that is the life I had always dreamed of. And yet, there is more, because now I find myself in a place of going, what does Michael want now? When I've stripped away some of the things in my life, for instance, the job, for instance, the teaching Tai Chi, for instance, speaking at Unity Center, which I was doing fairly consistently, and kind of leading other little programs and things, right? When I took all of that away, and when I stepped into that space and I said, let's see what happens now, right? I've noticed that if I go back to this question, I can think of material things that Michael wants, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with material things. But overall, what does Michael want? And the question now resonates quite differently. It's like, well, I've obtained a good foundation. The reason I have a good foundation externally now is because I created a good foundation within. And I'm looking at, what does Michael really want the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years of my life? What do I want? Where do I want to go? What do I desire? And that is a tougher question for me now to answer. It's not exactly the same question as this. And the reason I have this laptop up here is because there's a few better questions that I can ask now with this. The reason I brought up thoughts, actions, and habits is because it's your thoughts, right? It's your mind, the thoughts in your mind, the feelings that you have. Not every thought is yours. Not everything that you think about you is yours. It might have come from somebody else, and maybe it's time to let something go. You don't have to attach to every thought. You are the observer of everything, right? You can have a thought come through. Those thoughts that come through that's like, oh, I'm such an idiot. It's like, well, that's not true. Now, if you want to make it true, you can go, yeah, I am. I'm such an idiot. And you can just keep telling yourself that over and over. And then that thought translates into behaviors, translates into habits. And what do you know, in your external world, you have things that continually make you feel like you're an idiot, right? All because of self-fulfilling prophecy in some regards. Or you can say, that thought comes through, man, I'm such an idiot. And you can say, no, I'm going to reject that. I'm not an idiot. And what am I? I am divine. I am not perfect, but I am certainly capable of more than I think I am. You are the one that has to master the thoughts and the feelings. And the mastery of those thoughts and feelings will produce a life in the external world. The changes in here will reproduce a change in your external world, as above, so below, right? That's Hermeticism. It also goes back to the Lord's Prayer. On earth as it is in heaven. On earth, the vessel, the physical form, as it is in heaven, the spiritual realm, right? Let it be done on earth. Let it be done here as it is in spirit. Let it be done in the physical world as it is in spirit. Perfection exists in spirit. Let that perfection, let all those good things come through and manifest themselves in the physical world, right? But they must come through you, because that's where the kingdom of God is. You are the creator. You are the co-creator. And I say co-creator because you are not the sole absolute creator. You are the wave. If you take an ocean, we talked about this before. If you take an ocean, right? You are the individual wave of the ocean. The ocean is the absolute source, God, whatever you want to call that, right? That's the absolute. But even though you are the wave, you still have all of the attributes of God. So you are co-creating with God. You are co-creating with the bigger elements and the bigger things and the bigger cycles of life. So the question that comes up now, because the way that I used to do things, what I was wanting was all relationally organized, and that's why I became enmeshed in my relationships, right? I wanted to save the marriage. I wanted to save the relationship. I wanted to provide for my family. I wanted stability for my kids. I wanted to build a home. I wanted to build a home that was a home of peace. I wanted to be a good husband. Wanted to be dependable. All of those things, right? And those aren't bad things in and of themselves, but they're all relationally organized around others. And so I had to sort myself out from that. The real question is now, what do I want when no one needs me to want it? Stripping everything away and going, what does Michael just in and of himself desire? Right? It's a very blank, very fertile area, and it's an area that's creating a lot of confusion is not the right word, but it's creating a lot of, I don't think I've ever been in this space before. And if you've never been in this space before, then of course it feels a little bit disorienting, right? And that's okay. Rather than asking the same question, what does Michael want? A better question now is, what feels alive to Michael right now? What makes me feel alive? Right? Because that's getting into our feeling sense. And actually, I have a thing in my wallet that I carry around. Where is it here? What makes you feel alive? And when was the last time you felt that way? What makes you feel alive? And when was the last time you felt that way? I came across this about a year ago, and I've carried it in my wallet ever since. What makes you feel alive? And when was the last time that you felt that way? Right? It's one of the great things about being a kid. So many things make you feel alive. And when we get in our older years, everything it becomes about, so much of it becomes about responsibility and doing things and taking care of this and taking care of that. And in some regards, we lose that sense of aliveness, or we can lose that sense of aliveness. So now the question for me is, what makes me feel alive? Right? And this will help sort out, what is it in this moment of now, because that's all we really have. And getting some clarity on what makes me feel alive will help give me some direction. And that clarity that comes through for that will unfold then into the steps going forward, so that I will have an intent, so that I will have a better, clearer picture of where am I trying to go? What am I trying to ultimately create in my life, in my world, what I want to experience? What makes me feel alive? And I tell you what, it's the simplest of things right now. What makes me feel alive is walking. Sounds weird, but it's true. What makes me feel alive? Walking. What makes me feel alive? Nature. What makes me feel alive? Working, and actually working in nature, right? Those are a few things here that make me feel alive. I feel at peace. I feel alive during those things. You may have to define a little bit about what alive means for you, right? There are things that charge me. What makes me feel alive? I pulled out my guitar last night. It's the first time I pulled out my electric guitar in probably quite a long time. Quite a long time. And I just sat down and I had a little argument with my mind, because my mind was saying, dude, what are you going to do with this? Right? What are you going to do by pulling out your guitar and maybe fiddling around and learning some song from the 1980s, right? What are you going to do with that? How is that going to help you? How is that going to be of value? But that is like performance-based thinking, right? That there has to be some transaction involved. Well, if I do this thing, there must be something that I have to be able to do with this thing, right? It's like, no, I just want to play because I don't know. I feel like picking it up. I feel like playing. I feel like I want to do this right now. So I allowed myself to do it. And the funny thing is, I took an old 80s song. I think it was Motley Crue. She's Got the Licks to Kill, right? And tuned up my guitar, pulled up some stuff on YouTube, and just sat there and for the next hour and a half just learned it and played it, and was like, hey, this is pretty fun. And before I knew it, an hour and a half had gone by just like a blink of an eye. And it was fun. It was something that made me feel alive. And there is value in that. Right? Not everything does not have to produce something tangible, let's say. That's the question that I'm going to leave you with today. What makes you feel alive? I know for some people it's dancing, and I like to dance, right? And dancing does make me feel alive. Going out and hitting what we call bob. Bob is a big dummy. a literal punching bag dummy that's name is Bob. And that's the way it's marketed. No offense against Bob's or anything. But that makes me feel alive to practice my martial arts on Bob, to do those things. It makes me feel alive, makes me feel energized, makes me feel awake, makes me feel focused, right? You can take this question deeper and say, what environments do I feel most alive in? Like if you take me to a bar, I am a fish out of water. I don't resonate with anything in that type of environment. Absolutely does not make me feel alive. But if you take me out to the woods, that's it, right? I feel extremely alive. What kinds of people do I feel most alive around? What kind of touch makes me feel alive? What rhythms make me feel alive? What work feels clean? What obligations feel heavy? What freedoms feel nourishing to me? These are all things that can make you feel alive. Let's face it, if you are carrying tons and tons and tons of stuff that is not yours to carry, like I was talking about back when we had the previous list up, if you're carrying tons of things that are not yours, that is somebody else's to carry, you are not going to feel alive. You are going to feel exhausted. You're going to feel drained. You're going to feel like, why can't I do this? What's wrong with me? Fact is, you're carrying too much, and that shit ain't yours to carry. Maybe you need to let some of it go. Part of what makes me feel alive is letting go of certain things. Sometimes that is actually necessary in order to come back to a sense of what makes you feel alive. In my previous versions of self, 10 years ago especially, I was so completely numbed out because it was the only way that I could survive my life at the time, right? And I later had to have that numbness broken open so that I could connect and feel all of the feelings and emotions that I had suppressed and repressed over the years and break out of that numbness. And it was very painful. And yet at the same time, it made me feel alive. I remember going to the Man on Fire weekend retreat. The first thing that the leader asked when he took each of us men that was there off on a little private moment with him, he said, "What do you want? What do you want out of this weekend?" And I remember saying to him, I just want to feel alive again. I don't want to feel like a walking zombie in my life anymore. I want to feel alive. And nobody else could do that for me. I had to do these processes. I had to do these things myself. I had to prioritize Michael above everything else for the first time. And that's a little bit about why I let go of so many of the things that I let go of in the past 6 to 8 months, is because things got to be draining to me. Things that were once very, very wonderful had turned and taken a shift. They had become draining to me. And my reasons for continuing them were all reasons external to me. It was all thinking about others and what they needed. And when I pulled that back and said, that's fine, that can be true, but what is it that I need? What is it that I want to do? What is my knowing telling me right now? And in all those instances, it was, I want to let go of these things. And so I did. And part of letting go helped me feel more alive. The process of transformation is actually just fabulous because it, like most things in life, is an unending journey. And it is the journey that's important. It is what happens along the journey that's important. And as you navigate, as you go through life, and this is something I always taught in Tai Chi, when things feel frantic, when things feel chaotic, when things feel confusing, when things feel disorienting, overwhelming, whatever it is, whatever your term is for that, right? The goal is not, the solution is not to do more. to figure it out. Figuring it out is a mental capacity. It's a mental game, right? No, the solution is to go within. The solution is to slow down. And the first thing you do is you stop or you pause and you breathe. And you take nice deep inhales and full exhales. And if you're in those spaces and places, your body will say, I don't have time for this. Breathe faster. I don't have time to breathe this slow. That's a cue for you to actually say, no, we are going to breathe slowly in this moment. And let your body sink into that feeling. And it's not going to happen in one breath. You may need to do multiple breaths for multiple minutes. Don't do it while you're driving, of course. Pull off to the side of the road if you need to do that. Take the time because you have to recenter. Everything will pull you in many, many, many directions if you allow it. You are responsible for this sacred space right here, right? You are the only one that can truly manage this. And it is your responsibility and your accountability to manage this. And when things are pulling you in too many directions, you come back here and you sink even deeper into here. And that will give you clarity on, is this as important as I thought or as they are making it? And what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And what is mine? And what isn't mine? And what do I have capacity for if I want to help? Do I even have capacity? And the fact is, I don't have to help with everything. I don't have to do all of these things. I don't have to be all of these things. Allow yourself to come back here, to come back within. Take those breaths that you need to. Focus your attention. Let it relax. Feel it as though water, nice water, is just flowing over you like you're under a small waterfall of flowing water. And let that feeling just cascade over your entire body, flow all the way down into your feet. And don't allow yourself to engage in whatever's going on until you've reached a place where you feel like that breath is a sigh of relief. That will be a cue to you that you have, in that moment, regulated your nervous system enough to take it out of fight-flight mode, to take it out of constant doing mode. And that's your first task. I know there's a lot of stuff that was covered in this today. Hopefully you're able to take something from it. And as always, blessings and love to each of you.